Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada. Jayo Jayo Prabhupada, 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 Jayo Jayo Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to ISKCON Toronto. Anybody visiting for the first time? Show of hands, few newcomers. Okay, let's welcome them with a big round of applause. Thank you all for being here on a Saturday evening. At ISKCON Toronto, we have weekly Sunday feast programs. So every Sunday evening from about 6 p.m. onwards to 8:30 p.m., we have Sunday feast classes, Kirtan and Prasadam. But today we have a very special guest speaker, which is why we've organized a program on a Saturday evening. Sorry, everyone at the back, maybe we can all slide forward as it's fairly a small gathering. The room is not filled. We can all come closer. I'll give a quick few seconds for everyone to settle down. Thank you all. So as I was saying, because we have with us Caitanya Charan Prabhu, who's he's not visiting Toronto for the first time. He's not a new speaker here. He's visited our temple multiple times in the past. Almost a couple of times a year before COVID, but we're so happy that he's here again for this year. So just a little bit of background and bio about Caitanya Charan Prabhu. So Caitanya Charan Prabhu is based out from Mumbai, India, but he extensively travels all across the world, especially in North America, and he's known for his deep analytical topics and classes, especially at universities, large corporate companies. He's also a writer. He's authored over 30 plus books. And if you see, he has a website, thespiritualscientist.com. In this website, he speaks about Vedic perspective on contemporary issues and analyzing the challenges that we face in today's modern society and how spirituality can help not just overcome, but also give a solution in dealing with these day-to-day challenges. He's also known for prolific classes and stories from Ramayana, Mahabharata. So today's topic is themed around Hanuman's journey to Lanka. I'm sure we all celebrated Ram Navami recently. Everyone knows the story of Ramayana, but there are a lot of details and important learnings which we hope to uncover in today's session. So today's session is second part from the series on Hanuman's journey to Lanka. It's going to be based on how we can overcome ego, letting go of our ego for personal growth. So we're going to hear a very practical and personal perspective on how ego can be overcome from teachings of Ramayana. We also have some books which we'll speak about later. There's lots that can be said about Caitanya Charan Prabhu, but I will let you all hear from him, and we'll be happy to take some question and answers towards the end. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Caitanya Charan Prabhu once again to ISKCON Toronto.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanushalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today, and sorry I got a little late in coming. So today I'll speak on a life lesson from the Ramayana. I'll take this in 3 broad parts. Okay. This will be a whiteboard. I think there's no curtains over there. No? Can you see what is writing over here? Okay. Good. So first I'll talk about 4 approaches to the Ramayana. That when we hear the stories of the Ramayana, what do they mean? How do they relate with us? So we look at 4 ways of looking at them. Then we'll talk about Hanuman's journey, and especially the second obstacle that he faced in the process. And the last part we'll talk about the power of humility. What I'll talk about 3 or 4 aspects of humility to understand how it is a power and not a weakness, and when it might become a weakness that can be exploited by others. So throughout the session, if anytime any of you have any questions, you can feel free to raise your hands, and I'll feel free to ignore your hands. Not really. So if the question is related with the topic, then I'll answer it immediately. Otherwise, we'll have question answers at the end. So these 4 approaches I summarize using an acronym called LEAD. See, when we hear the stories, many of you may have heard the stories of the Ramayana while growing up. You may have seen some TV series or some movies or whatever, some Amar Chitra Katha. So the first level is the literal level. At the literal level, we hear the story, and at this level, when we approach the story, the primary focus is just the narrative, the plot twists. And it is that we seek some kind of entertainment. Now, because these are considered sacred stories, so there is a certain level of pious entertainment in that. But generally speaking, at this level, the excitement is in the twists in the story, what happens here. And the Ramayana is quite dramatic that way. There's a prince who is about to be coronated, and at that very moment there's a conspiracy from within the family, and suddenly he is exiled to the forest. And just when his exile seems to be ending peacefully, at that time there's another conspiracy, and then his wife is abducted from him. So, and they're separated for a long time, and there's a climactic battle. So the story itself is interesting. Now at this level, this is the level which most people approach. They think, okay, it's story. But the problem with this is, if you are only approaching at this level, and once you know the story, it becomes boring. It's just like, suppose there is a new movie that has been released. Often when the reviews come, they say spoiler alert. Or this is a spoiler-free review. The idea is that if you know the story becomes spoiled for you. You can't enjoy it. So there is that way, okay, there's not much depth to explore. The next level is the ethical level. So at the ethical level, we look for values. Values for primarily guiding our life, for guidance, for decision making. So the way, say, Ram acted when he was sentenced to exile. He didn't rebel against his father. How Ram stayed diligent. How Sita went with him. How Lakshmana was sacrificing. How Hanuman heroically executed the service that he had been given. How Ravan's completely unrestrained sexuality and lustiness got him into trouble. These are all from which we learn lessons. So much of the value that the tradition has drawn is maybe not explicitly stated at the ethical level, but at the ethical level we learn lessons. Okay, basically this place, okay, in this situation this character did this. What were the reasons for doing this? Now, how was their reasoning right or how was their reasoning wrong? What can we learn from it? That's the ethical level. Now, I'm giving a very basic introduction to each of these because these levels can be explored at a much deeper level also. Now, generally, when we are looking at sacred characters, is there some other table or something? So, at a sacred level, because these characters are considered sacred, so for example, when Sita was abducted, so did Sita make a mistake in sending Ram away? Did Sita make a mistake in, say, coming out of the Lakshmana Rekha? Was Ram wrong in going when Sita told him to go? Was Ram wrong in not listening to Lakshmana? So at this point, when we are looking at sacred characters, our focus is not so much on who is right as it is on what is right. Because this is not so much the why, what is right? Because we want to learn from this. If you see Srila Prabhupada in his Bhagavad Gita commentary, the Bhagavad Gita as it is, you'll see in the first chapter and the second chapter, he seems to almost change his approach towards Arjuna. In chapter 1, if you consider the Gita, there is chapter 1 and chapter 2. So chapter 1, he's talking about how Arjuna is so thoughtful, Arjuna is so reflective. He's thinking that when he's about to fight a war, should I fight or not? What are the consequences of the war? And such a thoughtful and reflective person is eminently qualified to receive the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, previous Acharya Madhusudan Saraswati says that the primary purpose of the first chapter is to demonstrate Arjuna's qualification for receiving the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. But then right from the second chapter itself, in the first verse it says, Tam tatha kripaya avishtam ashrupurna kulekshanam. So there, thank you. That's okay. So there he says, Arjuna is attached. Arjuna is crying tears. Tears indicate ignorance, they indicate attachment. And such ignorance and attachment will be countered by the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. So is Arjuna wise and thoughtful, or is Arjuna attached and ignorant? Well, the point is, from different actions and in different situations, we can learn different lessons. So here our focus is not so much on judging the characters as learning from the characters. So we can have some amount of moral evaluation, but from a place of non-judgmentality. Then the third is allegorical. Now this is an allegorical approach, perspective or lens. What this means is, does anyone know what an allegory means? That's an alliteration. Okay, yeah. Allegory, yes please. Explaining a lesson through a story. That's true, good. So then how is that different from the ethical then? Yes. Exactly, thank you. So the point is, the story is not important at all. The story is simply a tool to tell some messages. And the story may not be historical, the story may just be like imaginary or creative, something created by the imagination. So now it's important to understand that Ramayana itself is not allegorical. The Ramayana is historical. At the same time, it's called Itihas, but it's not history in the sense in which we understand it. The history we understand is constantly filled with dates, this date, this date, this date. It is history to teach values. And in the allegorical perspective, what happens is, often characters or situations, they can represent certain themes. They can represent certain ideas. So those themes are illustrated through those characters. So for example, at this level, if we consider the character Ravan, now one question would be, who is Ravan? But another question could be, what is Ravan? Now what is Ravan? What does it mean? That Ravan embodies the selfish, unrestricted lust within the human heart. So here Ravan is a person, but that person also represents certain things. Now this approach is also used in the tradition. For example, when Devaki, the mother of Krishna, has 6 of her children dying, being killed by Kamsa, the evil demon, who is her cousin actually. So those 6 demons are considered to represent something. What do they represent? Does anyone know? Yes, please. Okay. That's one way of looking at it. Yes, now the 5 senses and mind, that's a good correlation actually. In one sense, here they are destroyed. The 6 children are killed. So the senses and mind, we don't destroy them. Is there anything else? 6 significant? Yes, the 6 dark forces within us. Lust, anger, greed, envy, pride and illusion. So now they are children, but they also represent something. So there's the allegorical perspective, where characters represent certain things. So now beyond that, what is the last letter in the acronym? D. D is the devotional perspective. So at the devotional perspective, we see everything as the Leela of the Lord. That everything is arranged by the Lord for the reciprocation of love, for the advancement of His purposes. So for example, the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says in his purports that Arjuna's illusion was orchestrated by Krishna so that the Bhagavad Gita could be spoken. So from that perspective, Arjuna is neither, the point is neither Arjuna is thoughtful, nor that Arjuna is attached. The point is, this is orchestrated by Krishna. So now the devotional perspective is important. So if you look at these three perspectives, what are the four perspectives? L was literal, then ethical, allegorical, and then devotional. So now, in any of these perspectives is taken alone, without considering the other perspectives, we can learn something, but we can also miss a lot. So for example, if we take only the devotional perspective all the time, at that level, we understand that everything is arranged by the Lord, and ultimately, it is the Lord's reciprocation of love with His devotees that is being highlighted. But then, when we are at that perspective alone, there are so many other lessons that we might miss out on. And what happens is, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is one of our prominent acharyas. He also broadly mentions, he doesn't use this acronym, but he also mentions various levels. And he says, the Kanishtha Adhikari. Kanishtha is the initial, the starting devotees. Initially, people look at the approach at this level. Then, those who are Madhyama, those who are middle level, those who are more analytical, intellectual, they approach from the ethical and the allegorical perspective. And quite often, those who approach from the ethical and the allegorical perspectives, they look down at those who approach from the literal perspective. They're just children's stories, you know. What are you getting so caught about children's stories? And he appreciates, yes, you're thinking deeper, that is good. But he says that these people who are approaching from the analytical perspective, they need to remember that there is another perspective. There is a higher perspective. This is the perspective at which the Uttamadhikaris, the topmost devotees, those who are filled with love, those who are completely pure-hearted, they approach. Now, at first glance, those who approach at the literal level and those who approach at the devotional level may seem very similar, because they're both relishing the story. At the devotional level, one just relishes the story and delights in the story. But what is the difference? So, literal and devotional, they are not the same. The difference is twofold. The first difference is that those who are at the devotional level, they are not attracted to other things. Bhakti paresha anubhav viraktiranyatra. Those who are at the literal level, they will turn on TV and watch Ramayana, and after Ramayana gets over, they'll start watching some Bollywood movie. So for them, these are just interchangeable forms of entertainment. Entertainment is the more important thing. At the devotional level, one understands that Krishna is the Krishna, Ram, they are the ultimate reality. And that Bhakti has given para isha anubhav. Bhakti is a process. It's an inner transformational process which gives us paresha anubhava. Anubhav is experience. Para is the Supreme Lord. Isha. Para is the transcendental. Isha is the Lord. So Bhakti gives us experience of God. And that experience of God is so enriching that it leads to viraktir. Viraktir anyatra cha. I just want to hear more about Krishna. I want to hear more about Ram. I don't want to hear about anything else. So that a realization that Krishna is Krishna, Ram, these are the ultimate reality, and everything else is just a temporary. illusion. That realization is a big difference. And the second difference is that those who are at the devotional level, they are capable of the ethical and the allegorical, but they may not be inclined to. The literal, those who are only literalists, they are not capable of any deeper reflection. Those who are at a devotional level, they are capable of it, but they say, yes, beyond all this is the beautiful Leela of the Lord. So these are various levels at which we can approach the sacred texts like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavatam, and we can draw insights from them. So today I'll focus primarily on the ethical and the allegorical levels, and we will talk about the journey of Hanuman. Okay. When Hanuman started off for Lanka, it was a spectacular sight. All the Vanaras, these were celestial apes. They're not ordinary monkeys, they are very powerful apes. The Vanaras, they had been deputed to search for Sita. And after much searching, they had come to know that Sita was across the ocean. So, if this is the Indian subcontinent, this is Lanka. Now, whether that Lanka is today's Lanka or not, that's a different historical question. But the point was, Hanuman had to go. He had to, some people say he flew. It was not exactly flying, it was leaping. He just took one giant leap and he leapt across. So while he was leaping across, that leap also conveys the leap of faith. Anything challenging, anything worthwhile, anything glorious we have to do, we have to jump off from the territory of the known and the comfortable to the unknown and the uncomfortable. So that's essentially faith. Faith basically, there is something which is known and comfortable. But faith means from there we venture into the unknown and the uncomfortable. So now we might be born in one country, but we come to another country. Come for education, we come for employment. It's a different place. There might be some comfort, there might be some facilities, but there is a lot unknown. So it's a leap of faith required. So now when he took this leap across the ocean, at that time, he experienced different obstacles. And each of these obstacles signifies an obstacle that a person faces. That is both in our journey in the material world towards achieving something worthwhile, as well as if we want to grow spiritually and attain the ultimate perfection of life. That is love of God. So any purpose that we pursue, whether it is a material purpose, it is a spiritual purpose. In any purposeful pursuit, we'll have different obstacles. So, what are those obstacles? That's what this journey signifies. So, I spoke about the first obstacle in the morning, so I won't go into that, but let's focus on the second obstacle now. So, Hanuman was going through Lanka. Does anyone know the 4 obstacles that he faced? What are the first obstacle? Does anyone know? Sorry? Oh, that was before he leapt off. And, Manaka. Yeah, Manaka was a mountain who just came in the way and blocked him. And Hanuman respectfully touched Manaka and said that Manaka wanted him to stop and relax. And Hanuman said, thank you, thanks, but no thanks. It was polite. So today morning we had a session where we discussed how to say no respectfully. So that was Manaka. The second obstacle was? Yes, Surasa was the second one. Simhika was the third one. So Simhika and fourth one was? Lankini, yes. So these all three seem to be some kinds of demons. So today we'll focus on Surasa. And then Simika and Lankini is what tomorrow I'll be having a session. I'll be discussing that in Brampton. But Surasa, so this is at one level the story, as I said, at the literal level, it can just seem to be an entertaining story, maybe a childish story. So what happens? Hanuman is going along, and suddenly this giant demoness-like figure emerges, and she has her mouth open. And Hanuman is trying to move ahead, and he says, "Is this blocked?" And he says, "Oh monkey, I have a blessing. Anybody who passes by this area will enter into my mouth and become my food. You cannot escape from here." This is the blessing given by the celestial deity Brahma. Hanuman says that the Brahma's word has to be honored. At the same time, I am on a very urgent service to Lord Ram. I have to find Sita for her. Please let me go. I'll find Sita. I'll give the message back to the others who are waiting for me, and then I'll come back. And then you can eat me. So Surasa says, "Do you think I'm a fool? If you go, you'll never come back." He says, "No, I will come back. I promise you. It's my word." He says, "No. He says, you cannot escape from here." So at that time, Hanuman says, okay, he's thinking. And he tries to, in one sense, outsmart her. So he starts increasing his size. And when he increases his size, what happens? She also starts increasing the size of her mouth. And then, further, he increases his size. He expands the size, she increases her mouth further. And this just seems to be going on and on and on. Now, while this is happening, see, when we are studying scriptures, it's important that we focus on what the focus of scriptures is. Sometimes people get caught into dates and dimensions and things like that. Those things have their importance, but they are not the most important thing. That this giant demoness is there. Hanuman is becoming giant in his size. There are, in scripture, in the sacred books like the Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are facts and figures. And there are values and principles. Now both are there, but within the tradition itself, the values and principles are much more important. So some people ask, when was this Ramayana written? When did this Ramayana actually happen? Yeah, all those are historical researches, and that can be done. Much of archaeological research as it is happening, much of what was considered earlier mythology is now being seen as actually in the domain of history. Off the coast of Dwarka, we have found that remnants of an ancient kingdom, which is very similar to the kingdom described in the Mahabharata and in the Bhagavatam. So it's Krishna's kingdom. So there is a lot of evidence that has been found, and that can be found. So there is a scope for studying facts and figures. But this is actually a greater than sign. A sign needs an explanation. That means it's not a great sign. But it's okay. That's a sign that it's not a great sign. But anyway. So putting a date on wisdom. Okay, the Ramayan's core contribution is the values and principles that it teaches. So putting a date on wisdom, it's important. But the focus of the tradition is actually going on a date with wisdom. It is learning the wisdom, internalizing the wisdom. That is much more important. So, as Hanuman's size is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and Surasa is also making her size bigger and bigger and bigger. So, as this competition is going on, and Hanuman it's thinking that now she cannot become bigger than this. And Surasa is thinking, she makes her mouth bigger and she says, he cannot become bigger than this. But both of them are just becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And then suddenly, Hanuman changes tack. Suddenly, Hanuman shrinks his form, becomes extremely tiny, and just goes inside her mouth and comes out. And he comes out before she can close her mouth. He says, Brahma's promise has been honored. He says, there are celestial powers and celestial promises, but everything has loopholes. And you'll see in the sacred stories that everybody is trying to find some loophole. So, so Hiranyakashipu has a blessing that he cannot be killed inside, outside, daytime, nighttime, on the ground, in the air. So the Lord is the supreme loophole finder. So Hanuman says your blessing was that whatever passes in this direction will have to enter your mouth. So entered your mouth and came out. And at that time, Surasa smiles. Till this time she has been stirred and almost angry. He smiled and he says, actually, I was sent here. I'm a goddess, I'm not a demoness. And I was sent here to test you. That there will be many obstacles you will face in your service to Ram. And you have passed this test with flying colors. Go with my blessings and attain all success in your service to Ram. So this particular story, what does it represent? Now, it's when two people have a conflict. Both can start expanding their ego. I am right, and I have this argument for why am I right. And the other person says, I have this argument for why I am right. And I have this person backing me up, and I have this person backing me up. And I'll bring this, and I'll bring this. And both tend to become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So, when two egos collide, it is just destructive. So, what does Hanuman do? Hanuman finds a humble way ahead. So, that's what we will discuss. The last part of this talk is the power of humility. So, in this power of humility, I'll talk about humility from a few perspectives. First of all, to understand what humility means and how it applies. So, I'll talk about three distinct definitions of humility or elaboration. Humility means to not let our ego come in the way of our purpose. Humility means to not let our ego come in the way of our purpose. So ego means I want to prove how great I am. Purpose is this is what I want to achieve. So sometimes people think if I am humble, everybody will walk over me. Well, that is not humility. We have to have a purpose. Hanuman had a purpose. The purpose was to get to Lanka. And while going to Lanka, he doesn't have to prove that I can become bigger than this particular being he has encountered. Okay, my ego, even if you think you are better than me, you are bigger than me, doesn't matter. If I can move forward in my purpose, then I will move ahead in my purpose. So, it is having a purpose and staying focused on that purpose. So, to elaborate on this explanation, let's consider normally what is the opposite of humility? Pride, or another word for pride? Arrogance. Another word? False ego, false ego. So, all these are opposites of humility. Well, yes and no. There is this binary version, this binary vision That means there's humility and there is pride, or there is ego. This has some truth to it, but it is incomplete. Why is it incomplete? Because actually there are not two elements involved over there. There are three elements. There is, on one side, ego or pride or arrogance. If you consider a pendulum, the other extreme of the pendulum is insecurity, inferiority. And in between these two, the word pride nowadays have a positive connotation, that I'm playing for my pride. I'm staying in hotel pride. Nobody says I'm staying in hotel arrogance. So, in between these two is actually humility. So, ego basically means I can do everything. That can go further, and I am everything. I am everything basically means I am God. That's why when we have ego, what happens is we edge God out. Basically, I become the center of the universe. Ishvaro aham aham bhogi. Krishna says that. I am the controller, I am the enjoyer, he says. So, ego is, I am everything, I can do everything. And we are taught to believe this actually. You can do whatever you want. You can achieve whatever you want. Now, yes, that we all need to have autonomy to pursue what we want to do. But nobody can do everything. And when there is ego, then we often gravitate or rather oscillate to the other extreme. Insecurity or inferiority is, I can do nothing. Oh, I know, I tried this and this didn't work. And I tried that and it didn't work. And then it can go further and I am nothing. So this is actually low self-esteem. In fact, it's not even low self-esteem, you can even say it's no self-esteem. So this is a toxic state of mind, and this should not be equated with humility. Humility is, I can do something. And that implies, I am something or someone. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita in 15.7, Mamaivaamsho jivaloke, that you are my part. So we are not the whole, but each one of us is a part. And we are all meant to play a part. Because we are parts, we are all meant to play a part. We are not everything. It's not that we can do everything, but that doesn't mean we can do nothing. So, for many people today, inside their own minds, they're oscillating between ego and low self-esteem, ego and insecurity. Now, whenever we see someone who is lesser than us, maybe if I see someone who is shorter than me, somebody who is fatter than me, somebody who is dumber than me, dumber is just a harsh word to use, but anyway, I see I have more IQ than you, I have more than this, and I start feeling superior, I start feeling good. On the other hand, if we see that our ego increases. On the other hand, as soon as we meet someone who is anyway better than us, maybe that person drives a bigger car than us, maybe that person has a bigger house than us, that bigger person is smarter than us, we start having self-esteem issues. We start feeling inferior and insecure. So, actually, our mind keeps oscillating between these two things. And quite often, what people call as ego is just or what the people who seem to be the most arrogant, most proud, most demanding of respect, they are often the people who are most insecure. And their arrogance is actually a facade to cover up their insecurity, their low self-esteem. See, there is people who don't respect themselves are the most disturbed when others don't respect them. Because they're seeking others' respect as a way of covering up their own lack of respect for themselves. And there are, if don't respect ourselves, then what happens? We demand respect from others. And that's why sometimes you'll see some people get so angry over petty things. You know, maybe we didn't greet them properly, we didn't address them with the proper honorific or whatever. Sometimes people get so angry over small things. Why? Because one possible small slights or disrespects, when people are insecure within, they become very agitated by that. On the other hand, even from a material perspective, now that some people have pride in the sense that they have some good abilities about them and they are using those good abilities to do some things, and they become proud because of that. Maybe somebody is a great singer, somebody is great at coding, somebody is a great doctor. Materially, there are different people who have abilities. So such people who actually have some ability and they have pride based on that. Krishna talks about the difference between, he says, amanitvam adambhitvam. There is mana and there is dambha. He talks about the wise people, they don't seek mana and they don't even have dambha. So mana is basically, we seek honor for what we have. But dambha is we seek honor for what we pretend to have. What do I mean by pretend to have? Say, if I am invited to a wedding or a party, and I am wealthy, I wear expensive clothes and go. Okay, I want respect from others. That's superficial, but okay, you're wealthy. But somebody, what they do is, just they have to go for a wedding, they'll buy some clothes from Amazon, wear them for that day and return them after that. So, we are claiming credit for what we don't have. Okay, so that is dambha. So when there is mana, that time what happens is, that person, if they're not disrespected, they're annoyed, but they're not very agitated. This is where the saying comes up that dogs may bark, but the caravan rolls on. You know, these people, okay, people will always criticize, they don't bother about it so much. So the point I'm making over here is that ego and insecurity, these are two sides of the same coin. So if I have a coin, now one side of the coin is ego, the other side of the coin is insecurity. And what is the coin actually? The coin is self-obsession. I'm obsessed with myself. How great I am, or how terrific I am, or how terrible I am. How wonderful I am, or how dreadful I am. So this humility, it basically frees us from this such self-obsession. So humility, what it does, sometimes people think, as I said, the common fear is humility means, if I am humble, people will walk over me. People will not respect me. No, humility is not about devaluing ourselves. It is about valuing something bigger than ourselves. It is about valuing something bigger than ourselves. So for example, if we are doing a project in our college or in our job, and we may be the team lead, and somebody who's assisting us, they have some suggestion. Now we could say, I have a plan, how dare you think that you know something better than me? like some bosses, they say, all of you are free to express your opinion as long as you agree with me. So, that kind of totalitarian attitude doesn't lead to anything constructive. So, if a team lead has humility, then they can take suggestions from others. Now, they'll be open to that. They won't feel insecure. You think you are cleverer than me? No, the point is not who is cleverer. The point is we have to do a project. And which is the better way to do the project. So that's why we go back to the starting definition. Humility means to not let our ego come in the way of our purpose. So Hanuman, for him, the fact that he leapt across to Lanka, that means he was not devaluing himself. He was not thinking that, he was not insecure. He was not having low self-esteem. It was an act of great confidence when he leapt across alone to go into Lanka. So he had courage. But courage also means, well, on one side, courage means being ready to fight whatever battle we need to fight. But courage has to be complemented with humility. Humility in this context means choosing our battles. Deciding which battles are necessary to fight. Which battles are feasible to fight. Not, if I think I'm everything, I can fight any and every battle. And then we end up doing nothing in life. Because if we start fighting every battle that comes before us, we'll get caught in small, small things. So, when we value something bigger than ourselves, that means when we make decisions, okay, should I do this or should I not do this? It is not based on how much respect I get. Now, is that a factor to consider? Of course. We are human beings. And none of us wants to be at a place where we are disrespected. But that is a relatively small factor. The much more important is the purpose we pursue. We make decisions based on what is the purpose I'm pursuing. And while pursuing that purpose, if sometimes I'm not respected, that doesn't matter. Say, when Srila Prabhupada came to America, at that time, he came in the 1960s, and there was the counterculture going on here. And the idea was that anybody, never trust anyone above 30. Because their idea was that all older people are a part of the establishment. And the establishment, nowadays the word for the establishment is the deep state. So there is all this, and they are all hand in glove. And Prabhupada came, he was past 65 or 69 at that time when he came. And when he came here, he was just an unknown Swami walking all alone on the streets. When he was in India, because of the culture over there, he was a sannyasi and he was respected. If anywhere in Delhi or Mumbai he would go, pious people would open their homes and give him a comfortable place to stay and feed him. Prabhupada came from there all alone to America. And America, he had to struggle. Should I stay in this house or that house? He had to struggle for rent. He had to struggle for getting the visa, extending the visa. He came on a 2-month visa and he had to keep extending the visa. So he came to America first. Then later on he came to Canada also. So for him, he had to do everything. At one time, when he was staying with some young people who were prospective students, they had no idea about how to teach, how to treat an elderly person, or to speak of a Swami who is one's guru. So they were living in a small apartment. There was just one restroom over there. And Prabhupada would stand in queue with everyone else to use the restroom. Now he could have said that, now that's a small thing, but he could have said, don't they have any culture? Don't they have any decency? Prabhupada didn't bother about that. He said they have some spiritual inquiry. They have some spiritual inquisitiveness. And I want to feed their inquisitiveness. I want to serve them, help them grow spiritually. So the idea is, we keep our purpose more important. It's not about devaluing ourselves. If Prabhupada had been devaluing himself, he would not have come here at all. First to think again, like Hanuman went all alone to Lanka, Prabhupada came all alone to America. The mode of transport might not have been miraculous. He came by a ship. But the purpose was still extraordinarily courageous. So he came. So he was not devaluing himself. But he was valuing a purpose bigger than himself. And that is what we all need to focus on. I'll conclude with one last point. That, have any of you heard this sentence? Any of you heard this? We often hear it so often, isn't it? But what happens when we hear this, especially in a devotional context, sometimes what happens is, the fallen becomes so big that the soul is forgotten. That I am fallen. Actually, first and foremost, we are souls. And the fallen, even if, say, we have some attachments, we have some conditionings, we have some less than desirable tendencies, which may be classified as fallen. But still, we are souls. And this fallen is just a temporary designation. Just like we may be males or females, we may be young or middle-aged or senior citizens. We may be Indians or Canadians or Canadian Indians or Indian Canadians, whatever. So, we may have all these designations, but those designations are temporary. You understand that beyond it, I am a soul. So similarly, we shouldn't be identifying too much with the fallen side of our conditioning. Yeah, there might be certain exercises of willpower we are not able to do. There are certain standards we are not able to follow. That's okay. Now, however we are still parts of God. Every soul, as I quoted earlier, was 15.7, that we are parts of God. Mamai vamsho jiva loke. And Krishna says we are always parts of God. Mamai vamsho jiva loke jiva bhutaha sanatanaha. We are always parts of God. Now this is the philosophical truth. But what does it mean practically for us? It means we always have parts in God's plan. If we are parts of God, that means we have parts in God's plan. So suppose there's the Indian cricket team and somebody is selected as a part of the cricket team. If they are a part of the team, that means they have a part in the team, isn't it? So like that, we may be fallen, we may have our conditionings. But just because we are fallen, that doesn't mean that we no longer are a part of Krishna's team. That we no longer have a part in Krishna's plan. So we all have a part. So if we focus on cultivating a service attitude, now Prabhupada would say the best prayer to offer to Krishna is, oh God, please engage me in your service. Please guide me. What do you want me to do? How can I serve in my particular familial position, professional position, social position, spiritual position? How can I serve? How can I contribute? So when we have that attitude, just that prayerful attitude, how can I serve? How can I contribute? Then doors will open for us. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. When we have that prayerful, humble, devotional attitude, Krishna says, Dadami buddhi yogam tam. I will give you the intelligence. Yenamam upayantite, by which you can come to me. Means by which you can make good choices. By which you can grow in your life, in all aspects of your life. So this humility should never divest us of our purpose. Our humility should not make us feel so unworthy that we think that I have no purpose or I can't have any purpose, that I'm worthless. Humility means let me not worry so much. am I better than this person? Am I worse than this person? No, we are all different. We all have parts. What is the part I can play? So when we focus on God, see, generally, when we just keep looking around us, look around, oh, this person is better than me. I feel bad. This person is worse than me. I feel good. Just keep going up and down, up and down. But humility means first we look up. That God exists above us and God has a part for me. So when we look up, connect with Krishna, then we can look ahead and find out what are the things that I can do. So that is how, when we practice bhakti, when we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, when we come in the association of devotees to learn more and more about how to connect with Krishna, what happens is we can find that inner connection by which we can find our way ahead. So ego and insecurity, both of these are characterized by we keep looking around. But when there is devotional humility, that means humility means to value something bigger than ourselves. Devotional means we understand that God is the biggest reality. So then what we do? First we look up and then we look ahead. We look up to know that I have a place in God's plan. And in the situation that I am in, okay, what can I do to make things better? How can I serve? How can I contribute? And in this way, we can actually have confidence. So humility won't take away our confidence. Rather, humility will take away the things that take away our confidence. The constant comparison with others, which takes away our confidence. Humility takes away that constant comparison, that chronic comparison. And thus, humility ends up boosting our confidence. I'll summarize what I discussed today. I discussed 4 main points. The first was about the 4 approaches. What are the 4 approaches to the epic, Ramayana? Which are the 4 approaches? Literal, ethical, allegorical, and devotional. So these are all at different levels, different people. The first level, the second level, and the third level. The highest level, the approach at devotional level. But all the levels have their value. Then we discussed the Hanuman story, Hanuman's journey, and within that, I discussed about the 4 obstacles, especially the Surasa obstacle. So we talked about in this story, there are facts, there are figures and numbers, but more important than the values and principles. So putting a date on wisdom is not as important as going on a date with wisdom. And what is it that we learned? What can I learn from it? And then I talked about humility broadly in 2 parts. First, I just talked about humility itself, and then we talked about humility in a devotional context. So humility is basically the balance between ego and insecurity, inferiority, low self-esteem. So it is, I can do everything, I can do nothing, but I can do some things. So I am something, I can do some things. So in that sense, when in Hanuman's humility was that, it means to put our purpose above our ego, to not let our ego come in the way of our purpose. Now, to have a purpose itself is important. And that's why we discussed about how do we understand that idea of a purpose from the perspective of devotional humility. So, humility here I discussed was not about devaluing ourselves. It was about it is valuing something bigger than ourselves. So, now what is that bigger than ourselves? That is ultimately God and the plan He has for us. So, devotional humility means that we value God as the biggest reality. So I talked about humility frees us from self-obsession. The coin of self-obsession we just throw away. We focus on God. And then we are His parts. That means we have parts. So how do we find that part? Not by looking around, oh, this person is good at this. We first look up and then we look ahead. And in that way, each one of us can find how we can serve, how we can grow, and that way we can fulfill our purpose in this life and ultimately become connected and united with our Lord beyond this life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all for your very enthusiastic participation. And of course, thanks to Prabhu for making us all enthusiastic. So we're going to take some time to, ask few questions to Prabhuji, and he'll be happy to answer. So if you can raise your hand. Okay, wow. Okay. I see so many now. Prabhu, how do you want to do this? Who should we pick?
Yeah, let's take it.
Okay, we'll start from here.
One Prabhu, one Mataji, we'll go like that.
Okay, we'll go one Mataji and Prabhu. So yes, Prabhuji.
I'll keep it short, Prabhu. So many people. So thank you so much for this wonderful class, Prabhu. I understood the fact about humility, keeping ourselves, the purpose higher, and then how we look at the purpose. My only simple question is, Prabhu, whenever we talk about conflict between two people, both of them are going to say, I am doing based on Krishna conscious principles, I'm looking at higher values, but then there's still conflict. So how do we address that?
Yeah. See, humility does not necessarily, there is a difference between, there are two different things over here. There is harmony and there is homogeneity. These two are not equal. In bhakti, we will have harmony because we are all trying to serve the Lord. But that does not mean two people are the same. There will not be homogeneity. So there has to be some acknowledgement that different people are different and each person may be inspired by the Lord to serve in a different way. So when we say cooperate, there are many different levels of cooperating. So one level could be cooperate. That means you operate here, I'll operate here. So it is not that two people have to agree all the time. The world is a big enough place and we can find our space. So it is that when we equate harmony with homogeneity, then we feel suffocated. Or we think either I have to suffocate myself or I have to suffocate the other person. But no, the world is a big place. Now sometimes we may say, okay, this time we'll do it your way, next time we'll do it my way. That we have to find out how it works. If sometimes one person wants to do something constantly their way, then we may have to find some other space where we can keep doing our things. Okay? Thank you. Yes, please.
Danvat Pranam, Prabhu. Thank you for the lovely discourse. Prabhu, there's this question I've been contemplating. I was watching a discourse and there they said, they were just talking about Prabhu Ram and said that, he always lived in the present. He never questioned why did Mata Sita step out of the Lakshman Rekha. He was always that kind of a man who lived in the present and that's why, he has that kind of fortitude that he's Maryada Purushottam and we follow him. But I've been contemplating that, okay, when I chant, I do my rounds, there is beautiful association with devotees. A lot of things naturally we get purified, but from a bhakti standpoint, is there like any practical flow chart or something that you can provide that will help us stay in the present? That is something I've been contemplating, that how do because I just think you have a very methodical approach and that would help me to really understand how to do that practically.
Yes. See, there is a difference between live in the present, which is not the same as live for the present. We all need a higher purpose for life. So when we say live in the present, That means, okay, experience what we are experiencing right now. Don't get caught in worrying about the future or lamenting about the past. But what differentiates humans from animals, one of the many things, is that we have the capacity to plan for the future consciously. Basically, animals may also prepare for a cold season or a rainy season or a drought season by stuffing food in their body and other things. But they are just doing it by biological instinct. We humans can consciously plan that. Basically, intelligence means the capacity to recognize that I can trade the present for the future. That means I can just play and party right now, or I can study and work right now, and then I'll have a better future. So we can't live for the present. We have to live for something far bigger than the present. In fact, if somebody is sick and in pain, and you tell them live in the present, they will have to live in misery, because their present is misery. So these are nice ideas, live in the present, but we cannot absolutize them. So was Lord Ram living in the present? Well, you could have said that, but he was definitely living for something bigger than the present. When he was exiled to the forest, at that time, what was he thinking? He was thinking, 14 years I have to go to the forest, but he assured Kaushalya that the 14 years will just go like 14 days. And then the harmony in our family will be restored and I'll soon be back. He didn't want to break their family just to claim the rights to his kingdom, claim his rights to the kingdom. So I'd say for us, we live for something bigger than the present, and that is Krishna. And when we are trying to serve Krishna, when we are trying to remember Krishna, sometimes thoughts can come from the past. Sometimes some thoughts can come about the future. So Srila Prabhupada, he said that there are temples. When he was alone, like a lone Swami walking on the streets in New York, he said, there are temples and they're filled with devotees. Only time is separating us. That means he was thinking about the future. So there is a difference between, say, learning, if you consider the past, there's learning from the past, which is good, but there is lamenting about the past. That is unhealthy. And far more unhealthy is living in the past. Similarly, if we consider the future, there is planning for the future, and there is worrying about the future. So now, what exactly is the difference between how can we ensure that we are learning or planning and not lamenting or worrying? The idea is, generally, can you see this color? Okay. These happen in the modes of rajas and especially tamas, the lower modes of material nature. When we are ourselves in a lowered consciousness, then when we start thinking about the past, this person did like this to me, and why did I do like that, and like that. So if we elevate ourselves to sattva, say we do some mantra chanting, we do some deep breathing, we go to a natural peaceful place, and then when we are in sattva, then we can look back at the past. And then we can learn something from the past. So basically, you could say that in life, there are always waves. And say the waves keep coming up and down. Now, while we are caught in the waves and we are trying to look back, we'll be caught in the past. But if we can raise ourselves a little bit up, and then say, I was here at one time, and I'll be here later. So I can look back and learn. I can look ahead and plan. So basically we need to place ourselves in, here it's rajas or tamas. We are in the lower modes where we just caught in situations. But in sattva, we at least temporarily raise ourselves about our situations. And then we can look at the past and look at the future. Okay? Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhu, my question is that, like, I'm a psychologist by profession, And when we speak to people who are undergoing trauma, depression, stress and everything, and when they're talking about past and their worries, you sort of understand that this is futile, it will not be helpful, and you want to get them to bhakti or want to preach and give them that sort of holding hand. But they're not prepared for that. And as a therapist, you can't be telling them, you chant and everything will be fine. And they'll be like, what is wrong with you? So what can be a way in which we can have that conversation, open them up to that direction?
Okay. So, it's an important subject. I'd say two different things. First is that if we are in a particular profession, then our first role, our first responsibility is to do what is expected in that profession. You know, our profession should not become our garb for preaching. If we are a therapist, our purpose should be to help the people. And while we are trying to help them, that basically that seva bhav, that service attitude is there, then this can be one resource. So if we have that attitude, that this is one resource that is available.